This is the Tech Phantom, and welcome to video number 16 of this walkthrough. And there is actually going to be a part 1 and a part 2 to this video because there are a couple of areas that are separate that I wanted to tie together, or happen to tie together, when you actually follow the lore. And this is going to be a pretty lore heavy video. There is going to be a very, very long boss fight that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of a recap during that time, so it's a little bit not as boring for you guys. So with that said, let's get started. So we just talked to Logan, and he is back since we saved him from Sen's Fortress. But as soon as we save him, he tells us that, hey, I got the itch to travel again. I'm on a quest for knowledge, so I'm going to be taken off pretty quickly. And he also comments on the fact that we show great potential. And what that means is that our intelligence is high enough to handle his magic. He will only sell you magic if your intelligence is at 15 or more. If it's less than 15, he will tell you that he can't help you. There is something about your structure or your frame, and you just can't handle it. So the developers put in that a little bit of dialogue to sort of show that Logan cares for you. Once he believes that you are intelligent enough to handle his spells, he will tell you that he recognizes your potential and that you shouldn't waste it and you shouldn't die uselessly. Alright, so we come to Anor Londo, and the path is cleared to the Duke's archives, and I think that's where Logan is going to be searching for knowledge. And we are accosted by a fang boar, by an armor boar. And these enemies are very, very strong. Their attacks will take off a huge amount of your endurance, and they're difficult to kill. So I have the best luck by using strong attacks, either a two-handed strong attack or by doing a jumping attack. And the boar drop the fang boar helm, and if you read the description of that item, it's very interesting. It says that the fang boar helm is actually the severed head and proof of our victory over the boar, just like the gods severed a dragon's head as a war trophy and as proof of their victory. So this is really interesting. So in Lordran and this world that we're in, the humans, because of their devotion to the gods, or because that they know that the gods are so superior, they're trying to imitate the gods. And just like a god can kill a dragon and sever its head and take it as a trophy, humans are doing the same thing. Obviously, they're not doing it to dragons, but they're killing fang boars, and they're cutting off their head and keeping the head as a trophy. So the humans are emulating the gods because of their devotion, and that is something that this devotion is something that the gods can take advantage of. And we will tie that up way at the end of the series, but this is sort of an important fact. It's not. It doesn't sound to be very important or something that you would actually pay attention to, but when you put it in contact with the rest of the story, it's actually a nice piece of information that sort of locks in and goes together with the story of the Church of the Way of the White, and actually the whole story of Dark Souls, and I'll talk about that. Alright, so we are seeing these new enemies in the Duke's archives, and they are Crystal Knights. and they have been crystallized. Their armor is crystallized. They're crystal themselves. Their swords are crystal as well. And they don't have a crystal shield, but they have a very, very powerful shield. They have the Caduceus shield, which is just as good as the Knight shield, and it's one of the more stable pairing shields in the game. The only shield that is more stable than the Caduceus shield or the Knight shield is the Boulder shield. So these enemies are very, very strong. They have attacks that are difficult to parry. They have a shoulder bash. They also have a jumping attack, and it covers a huge amount of ground. And in addition to that, they're being buffed by that sorcerer over there. And also here we find a large crystal blue golem that drops the broken pendant, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video. That is actually something that's related to the downloadable content, and we're going to be doing the downloadable content after Seath, so I will talk about the broken pendant at that point. Alright, so at the beginning of the video, you guys saw me switch to Havel's equipment, and I also put on the Ring of Steel Protection. And I'm using the Crest Shield, which is upgraded all the way up because of the high stability and also because of the very high magic defense. And we need that because there are going to be sorcerers shooting Soul Spear at us constantly. So let's talk about these sorcerers a little bit. If you remember, they are not new. They are actually... we have seen them before. We saw one of these sorcerers in the church in Undead Parish, and as a matter of fact, if you remember, there was an area overlooking Reah where Reah would pray, where a channeler, a six-eyed channeler, and that's their name, where a six-eyed channeler would be. And he was keeping an eye out for something, or keeping his six eyes out for something. We don't know what. Maybe it was Rhea, maybe it was something else. Maybe he was trying to defend that area. But these enemies originate from Seath, but Seath has ordered them to go out and sort of explore Lordran. So by the end of the video, actually by about the middle part of this video, we're going to find out why he did that, and we're going to find out a little bit more about the origin of the six-eyed channelers. Alright, so we remember that the Lady of the Darkling told us that Seath is a very formidable opponent and we shouldn't even attempt to kill him. And we find here another crystallized enemy, but this happens to be a crystallized knight, as as opposed to a crystallized soldier. And the crystallized knight does have a crystallized shield. And we also find a crystal lizard. So finally we know where the crystal lizards are coming from. The crystal lizards are coming from the Duke's archives, and maybe they were rats or little vermin that were corrupted by Seath's experiments, and they've left and they've gone all over the place in Lordran. But that's now we know where the crystal lizards are coming from, and we know they're magical creatures because they drop twinkling titanite. So they are sort of the work of a powerful sorcerer. Alright, so you saw our first encounter with Seath, and it didn't go very well, but at this point, during the first encounter, Seath is invincible, so no matter what you do, you will die. And I equipped a rare ring of sacrifice because Seath has a dragon breath attack that can curse you. And we know that we're going to die because Seath is invincible, or at least I knew that, and I'm giving you a warning ahead of time. So I equipped that ring. It's a very good idea to equip the ring because not only are you going to keep your souls, but you are also going to be healed of curse if you happen to be cursed during the fight. And as a matter of fact, you saw me prior to the fight. I equipped the curse bite ring, or I should have equipped the curse bite ring. If I didn't, that was a mistake. But you can also equip the curse bite ring, and you'll still die, but you are not going to be cursed. Now, this is very interesting. When we died, we came not to the last bonfire where we were, but rather to this bonfire. And when we kill that snake that is guarding the jail cell, we obtain the archive tower cell key. And it tells us very interestingly that in the basement of the tower there are some writhing mistakes, quote unquote, from Seath's experiments. So apparently the serpent men are guarding the failed experiments, writhing experiments that Seath is carrying on God knows who, probably undead. And here are those writhing mistakes, and they are called Picassos. And a bunch of them have come out, and they appear to have been trained to come out and seek out whoever broke out of jail, because you hear this music that went on as soon as we open the jail cell door, and it's very annoying music. And we also see some of the jail guards, some of the serpent men. So anyway, what's interesting about the bonfire in this place is that it's a magical bonfire. It's a different bonfire to the other bonfires in the game. You cannot warp out of that bonfire. You can warp back to that bonfire, but you cannot warp out of that bonfire. So once you come into Seath's area, into his keep, into the Duke's archives, you are trapped here. So Seath has put some kind of a magic incantation on this place, and anybody that trespasses is doomed, because if they're undead and they die, they go back to this bonfire, but they cannot warp out. They cannot warp out of it. So Seath has somehow isolated this bonfire from the other ones using his magic. Alright, so we're making our way down, and we're killing the writhing mistakes. We're killing the Picassos. And actually, if you equip the covetous gold serpent ring, you will have a pretty good chance of getting humanity. And that is because these Picassos drop humanity. And you saw that there were 2 Picassos left sort of in jail. There were 2 that did not come out and start attacking us right away. They were sort of cowering in the corner, and they dropped miracles, the bountiful sunlight and the soothing sunlight. And if you read the description for those miracles, it's going to tell you that those were given to the handmaidens of Guinevere. So what is the implication? Well, the implication is that Seath has kidnapped or has convinced the handmaidens of Guinevere to be part of his experiments. And it could be that the handmaidens of Guinevere left Guinevere's service when she left Anor Londo, and we know that she left Anor Londo from the previous episode, and she married the flame god Flan. But it could be that Seath convinced them to be part of his experiments, and they were failed experiments. They didn't crystallize properly. They turned into Picassos, and he uses them as sort of a security source or guards for when somebody tries to escape. I don't think that's the case, though. I think no handmaiden would agree to that. So I think that Seath kidnapped them somehow and got them down here. All right, so we go to this area here, and we saw that Logan was trapped, and we need to get him out. So we're going to go out and we're going to try looking for a key to get him out, and we'll talk to Logan in a little bit. And then we start seeing the scope of this place. This place is just gigantic. And when we read the description for one of the keys, it told us that the tower initially was a place for storing very old and very ancient and important books and tomes, but now Seath has turned it into basically into a prison. And we saw that jail cell that we opened. We found another key that was being guarded by a crystal soldier. And here's some more of these soldiers. So I don't know if they're guarding something, or if they it looks like they're guarding the escape route from below here. So some of the jail cells have keys or other things that are being guarded by the crystallized dredgelings, by the undead soldiers. Alright, so we used the key that we found, the Archive Precinct extra key, and oh my goodness, we found Rhea of Thurland, who is now fully hollowed out. And we know that she's hollow because her face is all shrunken like a prune, and she is dark, and she attacks us right away. And we pick up 7 humanity. We also pick up the Ivory Talisman. And apparently what happened is that once we... but let's read the Ivory Talisman description first. It says that it's a talisman that's granted only to the female clerics, and that it scales highly with faith. So if a female cleric has unusually high faith, they're given an Ivory Talisman, which is going to make their miracles stronger. But I guess apparently Reah hollowed out once we bought all her miracles in the undead parish. Either that, or she was, maybe that six-eyed channeler that was in the undead parish church had something to do with it. But anyway, it's a shame that Reah showed up here and she's hollowed out and she attacked us. Now, she did have 7 humanity, and if you remember, Reah's original mission was to figure out a way to. She needed to find the rite of kindling, and she had some knights to help her kill undead and collect undead humanity from the undead as well. And she has 7 humanity, so apparently she's been quite successful in her mission, because she was able to collect 7 humanity from the undead. So we come to this place here, and here we find Reah's outfit, and we also find a ring. And from a lore standpoint, this is one of the most important rings in the game. It says that this ring is given to the head bishop of the Way of the White, who is an apostle to Allfather Lloyd Wynn. And he is the guardian of law and caste, and he is a royal in Thurland. So, and Reah has this ring. So what in the world does that mean? Well, let's see if we can piece this thing together. If you guys remember, we talked about Havel the Rock in the video during Anor Londo, during the Snow and Ornstein fight. And we also, Havel the Knight was hollowed, and he was in prison in Darkroot Basin. And interestingly enough, there were some blue crystal golems in that area. But one item that we haven't gotten yet that is related to Havel the Rock is the Great Magic Barrier Miracle, which we will get much later in the game. I don't know if we'll get it in this playthrough, so that's why I'm telling you about it. But that miracle says that Havel was a bishop of the Way of the White, and that he hated magic, and that he created this miracle to make sure that he couldn't be taken down by magic, because he really despised magic. So Havel the Rock was a bishop in the Way of the White Church, and Rhea, who was a royal and who was sent on a cleansing pilgrimage after she became undead, as are all undead in Thurland. Anyway, Reah ended up with this ring. Now, the Great Barrier, the Great Magic Barrier Miracle doesn't state that Havel is the head bishop. It just says that he is a bishop in the church. But it makes absolute sense that he would be the head bishop of the church. And that is because he was a friend of Lord Wynn. And he was part of the court. He had helped Lord Wynn fight with the dragons. So it makes sense that because Havel had very high standing with Lord Wynn, that he would have very high standing in Thurland and in the church. The other thing that the ring tells us is that it was a ring that was made by Old Father Lloyd, who is the head of the church, and apparently the head bishop is under him, or is appointed by Old Father Lloyd, and that Old Father Lloyd is the uncle of Lord Wynn. So Old Father Lloyd in Thurland has created the Church of the Way of the White, and the covenant of the Way of the White that can be entered into by talking to Way of the White priests, like Petras of Thurland. So he has created this church, and obviously this church is tied into devotion to Lord Wynn, because if you looked at the Ivory Talisman, it told you that clerics that have high devotion are female clerics that have high devotion are given this talisman. All right, so that's enough about that ring, and we are back in this area, and we find the robes of the channelers, and this is another really important item, and it tells us that the channelers were called snatchers, and they were called snatchers because they were following orders from Seath to procure subjects for his sinister experiments. And the helm of the six-eyed channelers tells us that the reason they have 6 eyes is because Seath was blind, and he wanted to complement his eyesight or improve his eyesight by using the snatchers, the 6-eyed channelers. So apparently the 6-eyed channelers were in charge of snatching bodies and bringing them to Seath, and Seath would then experiment on them. And so far we've only seen female subjects for experimentation, because the Picasas were female handmaid, were the handmaidens of Guinevere, and Rhea was a female. She was a royal priest, and a high-ranking priest in the Way of the White. Wow, so a lot to talk about, guys. We also found the key that is going to allow us to free Logan, so we're going to go and talk to him. But so let's just recap a little bit. Seath is seeking knowledge. when he did so, he became crazy, and he started doing some experiments on subjects. And apparently, for some reason, the experiments on females are not working, because we see the handmaidens of Guinevere, and we see that those were called writhing mistakes. They didn't turn into what Seath wanted them to. But we also see that Seath has successfully experimented, because he's created the crystal lizards, he's created the crystal knights, he's created the crystal soldiers, and the serpent men also follow him. So this is the reason why we were warned from reaching the Duke's archives, is that it's a place that once you come in here, you become trapped, because it has an enchanted bonfire that won't let you warp out. And it's also because there are these crystallized, very tough enemies. There are six-eyed channelers, and if you get caught, you're probably going to be put through some kind of sinister, horrendous experiment by the insane Duke, by Seath the Scaleless. All right, the other thing that I didn't talk about, that's, I guess it's a little bit important, is that the amount of knowledge in this place is just unbelievable. If you look at the scope and the size of the library, and this is just the tower. We passed other areas that had books as well. Apparently, Seath amassed a lot of knowledge and did a lot of research. So we can just imagine how powerful Seath is if he's able to do his research with all of the books at his disposal. All right, so let's talk to Logan this time. And he tells us he's in prison again. Yep, we know. And he comments also on the archives and how big they are, and what a wonderful storehouse of knowledge they are. And he's a seeker of knowledge, so he really doesn't even care about being in prison. It's almost that the only thing he cares about is having all of these books, at a fingertips distance from him, and not being able to do the research. But when we free him, he tells us that great, now I can dive into the books, and I can't wait. And our reward for freeing him is that he will give us he'll teach us whatever spells he's able to create, or he's able to learn about when he does his research. And if you go further into the cell, as you saw, we picked up a firekeeper soul. So there was a firekeeper that was in there as well. And that makes sense, because that bonfire is a secret or special bonfire, and it's being enchanted, or it's got an incantation from Seath to prevent anybody from warping out. So he probably had to kill the keeper of the bonfire, and he either killed her or imprisoned her and put her in that jail, and that's where we found the firekeeper soul. So so far we're able to sort of tie everything together. All right, so you guys saw me take out my armor, and that is because I have a long run back, all the way back to the area where we opened up the shortcut, and where we are going to find Logan, since I didn't rest at that bonfire. So we're gonna make our way all the way back, and I wanted to be able to run as quickly as possible. And now that we're back at the area with the enemies, we'll go ahead and we'll put our armor back. Okay, so let me sort of emphasize or repeat what I talked about with Rhea, because I may have missed an important tidbit. But anyway, I was talking about the fact that Rhea has the the White Sands ring. That ring was made by Allfather Lloyd, who's an uncle of Wynn and who's the head of the Church of the Way of the White in Thurland, and he could be a god himself, and that church is devoted to Wynn. But anyway, Reah has a ring, and we know that that ring is given by Allfather Lloyd to the head bishop of the church, and the only bishop of the Church of the White that we know of is Havel the Rock, who was hollowed out and who was imprisoned. So I think that Havel the Rock is the head bishop and is the owner of the ring. And when he was imprisoned for whatever reason, either because he hollowed out or for some other reason, they took the ring. Maybe he knew that he was going to be in prison, or he was in fear of his life, or when he was in prison, somebody took his ring from him. But anyway, the ring was given to Reah. So the obvious tie-in is that Reah and Havel the Rock are related. And again, Reah is from the royal house of Thurland. We know that because Petrus kept saying it, and he kept repeating the fact that he was jealous, or he was disgusted for her royal upbringing. So I'm going to say that Havel the Rock and Reah are related, and I'm just to pick a relation, I'm going to say that she is his niece, and that's how she ended up with the ring. And we'll talk more about that in part 2 of this video. But alright, so we talked to Logan, who is now free and is now hitting the books pretty hard. And he tells us that Seath is invincible, and that he is a true undead. He's a little different from you and I, who are undead, but he is a true undead. And that he cannot be killed. His wounds closed, and he has insulation from death. And that is due to the primordial crystal. And the primordial crystal was something that Seath stole from the dragons when he betrayed them. And in order for us to be able to hurt him, we have to destroy the crystal first. We have to find the crystal, and we have to destroy the crystal. And he tells us that if we proceed onwards and we go through the crystal forest, we can find the primordial crystal. Now he also says, he's talking about the great storehouse of knowledge here. He's starting to be seduced by the knowledge. The same thing that happened to Seath is starting to happen to him. As a matter of fact, he says, some say Seath had an unsound fixation, that he was obsessed, but he doesn't, Logan doesn't believe it. He says, hey, the knowledge in here is so vast and so incredibly powerful, and there are so many cool miracles that I can make, that I can totally understand why Seath locked himself in this tower and did nothing but experiment and try to gain new sorceries and new power by using, the vast storehouse of knowledge that is the Duke's archives. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on Logan, because he's going down the same path of Seath. As a matter of fact, he's not even upset at Seath for keeping him in jail. He's completely forgotten about that. He's on to his research and his quest for knowledge. And he's actually, from that standpoint, he's very similar to Seath. Alright, so we are resting at this bonfire. And this is a bonfire that I like to kindle all the way up. And again, I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is a relatively tough area. And number two, I don't want to die, because retracing at this point would not only ruin the continuity of the video, but is going to just slow everything down, and I think it makes for a better video when I don't constantly die. So I hope you understand that I've suspended my rule for being able to move fast as quickly as possible in this area, at least until now, because the enemies here are pretty tough, and even if you're not trying to be careless, you can take a little bit of damage and you can kill. And this is not a vitality build. I mean, my vitality is 25, which is pretty decent, but by no means is this a vitality build where the first thing I try to do is to go up to 40 vitality. I actually went with a this is a dex and endurance build with a little bit of intelligence thrown in. So that's the build that the character that I'm playing. Alright, but enough about that. Let's get back to the lore, because that's a lot more interesting than you hearing me rationalize 20 Estus West. So we're in the Crystal Forest, and we are seeking the Primordial Crystal so that we can take Seath out. And we see more golems, and now we know that these golems indeed are successful experiments. Based on everything that we know so far, Seath has created and crystallized everything. His power is so immense that he's been able to make golems, crystal lizards, crystal knights, crystal generals. Not only that, but it looks like the same thing that happened in Blighttown when the Witch of Izalith tried to emulate the original flame and lost control of it. It looks like the same thing is happening here. It looks like whatever knowledge or power Seath gained from his research is out of control and is seeping out and is transforming everything into crystals. There's a crystal cave, there's a crystal forest. Here is a golden crystal golem. And there's even some paths that are invisible to make it even more difficult to access the primordial crystal or the inner sanctum. So he's also put some incantations on the pathway so that you can't even see. Alright, so a little bit of secret loot. You saw me drop onto this cave and get the lizards. On the opposite way, I'm not going to go get it, but there is a Titanite slab. If you keep on going that way, it's a curved path. There are multiple videos on YouTube that show you how to get it. But and this is another sort of secret or obscure loot that I will get. It's easy to miss. But anyway, to go back to that slab, the reason I'm not going to get it is because you have to go on an invisible platform, and it's sort of curved. It's in the shape of a J or almost like a question mark. So the beginning of the path is straight, but then it turns. It sort of meanders and takes a very slight left-hand turn. And I normally die, 3 or 4 times until I successfully get the slab. So I'm not going to do it in this walkthrough, but you guys are welcome to get it. And hopefully I gave you enough information that you won't die too much. Remember that the end of the path is a little bit curved. Alright, so we've come onto the crystal caves, and we saw golems, we saw crystal butterflies or moonlight butterflies, and then we also see these man-eating shell clams. And they are so far the toughest enemy in the game that we have faced. And that is because they pack a wallop, they have a lot of hit points. They do a charging attack with their head. They sort of bash forward. And if they hit you and you don't have a lot of poise and endurance, you will be stunned. And then they quickly follow that up with another bash or with a kick from their 2 front legs. And that's almost a instant, that's almost not an instant death, but it's a guaranteed death. So you want to have a shield with very good stability, and you want to have as much defense as you can. Now they will drop Twinkling Titanite, and they will also drop purging stones. But you really have to be careful with these enemies. Now, what's interesting about the lore is that if you look inside, they have a bunch of human skulls. So anybody that's made it this far is basically been eaten by the man-eater shells. So this is Seath's last line of defense. And so far, nobody's made it, obviously, because Seath's still alive and is still holding his experiments. So anyway, the reason why the forest is crystallized and the cave is crystallized, and the reason why when we were walking through the archives, you saw that some of the walls are crystallized, is that this crystallization, this power, is seeping out of Seath. And when he went crazy because he found some power, some source of power that was so large that he wasn't able to control it. And that power is seeping out, and it's turning this entire area into a giant crystal, a giant icicle. I guess a crystal as opposed to an icicle. So again, that's a nice consistency. That's a good corollary to what happened in Blighttown, where another very powerful character tried to contain very, very strong power, her primal power, and she was unable to, and things went horribly wrong. The environment was affected, and demons were came from the chaos flame that she created. Well, the same thing is kind of happening here. Whatever is emanating from Seath, power it's emanating from Seath, or maybe the power is controlling Seath. Seath is definitely insane. Well, whatever is happening is also affecting the environment and crystallizing this entire area. All right, so we finally have this patch of the man-eater clams, and we are now ready to fight Seath the Scaleless. And I am going to warn you right now, guys, that it takes me 9 minutes to get rid of Seath. And I'll talk about why. So I'm going to try to do a recap, and I'll probably talk about a couple of other things. But I'll do a recap of the episode first, because we have learned quite a bit in this episode that's important. And I'll talk a little bit about what's going to happen in part 2. So first of all, this is the primordial crystal, and we know that we have to break it before we can hurt Seath. This is according to Logan. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to allow Seath to do it. He opens up the fight with a breath attack, or with a beam attack, crystal beam attack. And the reason is because I'm trying to cut his tail. And he has 3 tails, 2 shorter ones to the left and to the right. And then he has a longer one and a very powerful one in the center. And if you cut his tail, but you have to cut the tip. You can't chop in the middle or in the center, or just off the center. It has to be at the close to the tip. If you cut the tip and you do enough damage, you will receive the Moonlight sword. And a lot of people in the community think that that is the best sword in the game. That some people say that it's even overpowered, and that's because it has very light weight. It only weighs 6 units, but it can do a huge amount of damage if you upgrade it. And it scales very highly with intelligence, and it has the same moveset as the Claymore, but it's a little bit longer. And when you do either a one-handed or a two-handed strong attack, a wave of magic sort of shoots forward from the sword, and that's not a slow attack. If you guys, you know, some of the other projectile attacks are pretty slow. This one is pretty fast. So a lot of people think that the Moonlight Greatsword is the, you know, it's overpowered, it's the best weapon in the game. It does only magical damage, you know, a lot of the enemies and bosses in Dark Souls don't have high magical damage. Some do, but a lot of them don't. So a lot of people just swear by the Moonlight, the Moonlight Greatsword, especially, you know, intelligence builds. And again, because it can do a heck of a lot of damage and it's pretty light. And my next project after this one is going to be the another top 10 weapons, because I've completely changed my mind on the weapons after playing the game so much, and especially after the DLC. So I will be coming up with a new top 10. That's going to be my next project, and hopefully you guys will check it out and you will get to find out if the Moonlight Greatsword makes it to the top 10 list. But anyway, I promised you guys a recap while I am trying to get the cut, and I will do that. So, to recap, Seath is a very nasty individual. Seath betrayed the dragons, killed them. He was one of the last dragons that were left, and he joined Wynn, and he also stole secret artifacts from the dragons, specifically the Primordial Crystal. Lord Wynn gifted him with a shard of his Lord Soul, which would increase Seath's power, and he also made him a duke and gave him this territory to be his to rule. And that's why this area is called the Duke's Archives, because Seath was made into a duke. He started doing his research, and he found very, very powerful sorceries, and he went mad. And when he went mad, he started experimenting on the undead. And then he made six-eyed channelers. Seath is blind. That's something that we know from dialogue and description in the game. So in order to he made six-eyed channelers to be his eyes, to allow him to see where he couldn't, and he ordered them to go out and snatch subjects for his experiments. Now here's the part that's a little bit of speculation for me, but this is what makes sense. Now on the previous video, the Anor Londo video, the last question I asked is, why did the gods leave Anor Londo? We know that Lord Wynn linked the fire, and when he did, he didn't die. You know, his body form died or went away, and he was trapped in the Firelink chamber. And when Lord Wynn died, in an attempt to keep the Age of Fire going a little bit longer, because the Age of Fire was dwindling, I don't know if he was successful. He may have been, but time has passed, and the fires are dying, and the bonfires are dwindling. So we don't know what happened in Anor Londo at that point. My speculation is that at that point, Seath was becoming very, very powerful through his research in the archives, and eventually went mad. And he became so powerful and so insane that he was a danger not only to the undead, but he was also a danger to the gods as well, to the other lords. And I say that because he was doing things like kidnapping the handmaidens of Guinevere. So he had absolutely no regard for authority, and he didn't fear the gods because he didn't fear Guinevere, he didn't fear Wendelin, he didn't fear any of the gods. So I think it was because Seath became so powerful and went insane and started experimenting that the gods were afraid and they left Anor Londo. And besides, you know, the flames were dying, and apparently the flames are the source of power for the gods or for the lords. So that was another reason to flee Anor Londo, is to find a place where the flames or where the bonfires could be kept, and to escape Seath. So after the gods left Anor Londo, Seath only had to deal with Wendelin. Well, Wendelin went into hiding. Wendelin went to his father's tomb and guards his father's tomb, and he punishes the guilty with his covenant, the Dark Moon Blade Covenant. Alright, so that was the episode recap. So I hope that gives you my theory. You saw how quickly Seath went down after I finally got the drop, after I finally got the Moonlight Greatsword. And I think everything that I've told you guys is consistent with the story so far, and with all of the items that we have found so far in the episode. So that is going to do it for part 1. In part 2, we're going to go talk to Logan.